In an alternate timeline, after the events of Enies Lobby, the Straw Hat Pirates are on the hunt for a doctor. Becoming more and more desperate, they land on Drum Island and Luffy sets his eyes on the reindeer Tony Chopper. At the same time, the island's former cruel king Wapol has returned to retake his throne along with his older brother Mushul. Will Luffy and his friends be able to recruit a doctor and save the day? Welcome to Film Friday. Released in 2008, the episode of Chopper Plus, Bloom in Winter, Miracle Sakura, is the 9th feature film in the One Piece movie franchise, as well as the second arc remake. Now, if we recall the previous review, I didn't treat Episode of Alabasta particularly well. However, almost every issue that I had with that particular remake has been addressed and solved in this film. Firstly, the story itself is much more manageable. The Drum Island arc is quite self-contained and doesn't have the pressure of being the climax of a saga as Alabasta did. Secondly, they've also increased the running time from 90 minutes to 113 minutes, and I cannot praise that decision enough. The film feels much more properly paced. We're not flying from event to event, and as a result, the more powerful moments of the story actually have the required emotional time to properly land. And because this arc is much smaller, we also have time to serve the main characters a lot more. Despite being an abridged retelling, by the end of the film, I would say that characters like Chopper and Hiriluk are close to perfectly developed. I know who they are, what their dreams are, and I'm able to emote with them on a level that was impossible to do with Vivi in the previous film. The Straw Hats are also much better served, at least the ones that played a big role in the Drum Island arc anyway. Luffy, Sanji, Nami, and obviously Chopper get more than a satisfactory amount of screen time to make their roles in the story clear. Of course, if you're a fan of characters like, say, Zoro, then, well, this arc probably isn't one of your favourites to begin with. And speaking of characters, I can't go much further without mentioning that this What If feature examines how things would have turned out if the Straw Hats visited Drum Island after the events of Enies Lobby. So that means that we have both Robin and Franky already members of the Straw Hat Pirates. Nico Robin essentially takes the place of Vivi from the original arc, and Franky, well, Franky is also there. But the two of them are quite seamless in their insertion, and the story still works incredibly well with them there. In fact, Franky's presence opens up an interesting dynamic because he mainly gets delegated to assisting Zoro. And that made me realize that we really haven't seen much of those particular two characters interacting together. But that's not all. In addition to new Straw Hats, we also have a new original villain joining us for this arc remake in the form of Wapol's older brother Mushul. And I like the idea of this because, let's be real, Wapol was never an intimidating villain in any way, shape or form, despite his many ways, shapes and forms. Not that that's what the Drum arc ever needed though. This is purely the story of Chopper, and a strong villain isn't necessarily needed to tell that. And that's very convenient because Mushul is also not a particularly strong villain. Actually, you know what? In terms of design, if there was one antagonist who actually makes Wapol look cool by comparison, it's definitely this guy. His devil fruit is also just kind of confusing and weird. It's called the Noko Noko no Mi, and it allows the user to create poisonous spores, kind of like the poor man's version of Magellan's devil fruit. And it's good that Mushul is here, because Wapol was definitely already unthreatening. But here, we have to remember that in this version of the One Piece timeline, Luffy can use gears now, and that makes Wapol even more laughable. So at the very least, Luffy has to deal with two antagonists now, which adds a tiny bit more drama to the piece. And I will say that it is definitely satisfying to watch him finish them both off with Gear Third. The meat of this film is really contained within Chopper's flashback though. His story is as heartbreaking as ever and is animated beautifully in this film, which borrows significantly from the visual style of Movie 6. I've seen this film a couple of times now, and there are certain scenes that never fail to bring a tear to my eye. Because of the self-contained story, the film is also quite accessible to those who have never seen One Piece before. And I also put that accessibility a lot down to the fact that this feature focuses on Chopper, whereas most of the films and arcs in One Piece focus on a drama that the Straw Hats just happen to get themselves caught up in. So it's hard to get a feel for our protagonists because their development is assumed knowledge. But here, we have the origin of Chopper, and once a person knows this story, they have much more accessibility to the rest of the One Piece world, because they'll be able to identify with at least one character. In fact, initially after seeing this, it made me want to see film-style remakes of each Straw Hat's character arc, which we would eventually get in the form of some TV specials later on, some of which were much better than others. But back to the episode of Chopper. This film is rock solid with a well-adapted and abridged story, fantastic fights, and heartbreaking drama. To this point in the movie series, it may even be the best One Piece film. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this review. Next time on Film Friday, we'll be taking a look at One Piece film Strong World, the first feature film written by Eiichiro Oda himself, so you definitely will not want to miss this one. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, favorite, or subscribe, and please do comment with your thoughts on episode of Chopper Plus. This has been the Grand Line Review, and I'll see you next time.